Welcome to the All Things Endurance podcast. I'm your host, Rick Prince, and I'm excited to have on the podcast today Jeff Pierce. Jeff is the CEO of Carmichael Training Systems, oftentimes better known as CTS. He's also a former professional bike racer, raced for 7-Eleven, and most notably in 1987, he won the final stage of the Tour de France on the Champs-Elysees. It's one of the big epic things. And in sort of, I don't know, maybe ancillary, Jeff unknowingly is one of the reasons I got into cycling. I was out in Colorado in 1988, which is, I believe, the final year of the Coors Classic. I was out in Aspen and got to see the criterium there. And it just blew me away how fast these bike riders go and what a cool sport it is. And I was kind of into cycling, but that was like it. I'm like, I definitely want to do this sport. This is the coolest thing ever. So anyway, it's a very long-winded way of saying, Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. Yeah.
So maybe, I obviously mentioned a little bit about your background, but maybe if you could give the listeners a little bit more about your sport background, and as well as sort of post being a pro cyclist, what your sort of career trajectory was up until the point where you are now running CTS.
Yeah. Thanks, Rick. So yes, I was a cyclist. Played all kinds of other sports as a kid in junior high, high school, so on and so forth. But I was fortunate enough to end up in Detroit when my father moved there for one of his career moves. He went to work at Ford Motor Company. And I don't think very many people actually would say they were fortunate to move to Detroit at that time in the early 70s. But Detroit had a cycling club called the Schwinn Wolverine Cycling Club, and that's how I got into cycling. And one of the most famous and prolific coaches ever in sort of U.S. history is Mike Walden, was the guy that ran that club. And so I was lucky to get some amazing coaching and guidance from the very beginning, when I very first started racing and didn't basically know anything about the sport or how to go about it. I just know I wanted to do it, and was lucky to end up there. From there, went on to the Schwinn national team, then the 7-Eleven team. We were the very first very first U.S. team to ride in the Tour de France, and that was the vision of Jim Mockowitz, who put all that together over a number of years. And in 1986, we ended up being the very first team from the United States to go ride in the Tour de France. So quite the experience. And then towards the end of my career, ended up back in the United States and helped start up a domestic team called the Chevrolet LA Sheriffs. And we had a great run here back in the United States as well. So cycling career, 22 years in total, and amateurs and pros mixed together. That was a pretty cool way to make a living back then. Hardly anybody knew that was even a possibility, let alone you could actually do it. So was pretty lucky. I knew at that time I was also going to have to eventually get a real job. And so during my career as a cyclist, I also finished my degree at Michigan State, and actually it's a business degree. And then after cycling, went on into the publishing world, then into marketing with GT Bicycles, had some pretty great experiences and good stories there. Then USA Cycling as the high performance director, then on into T-Mobile and telecom for a number of years, probably almost 15 years, back to USA Cycling. And then a couple of years ago, came on board at CTS as the CTO here, or CEO here, sorry. So
That's awesome. That's a heck of a career.
yeah, it's all over the place. And I wonder, I'm like, did I really plan this out, or is this just how it happened? And, I just, they were all pretty well thought out moves and deliberate, but at the same time, when I look at them all down in the same place, it's kind of an eclectic collection of things for somebody to do. But they all had their place and where I ended up and who I am now. So I'm pretty grateful to have had all those opportunities as well.
Oh, for sure. No, it's an incredible resume. So as the head of CTS, you're the head of arguably one of the largest and probably one of the first sort of coaching companies that really, I would say, not standardized, but sort of brought the legitimacy of coaching to the masses. So going back to what you were talking about with like Mike Walden, how has the coaching landscape changed from not just cycling, of course, but from the days of, Mike Walden and back in that time to where it is now?
Yeah, that's an interesting progression as well. I think um, in the beginning, it was always, hey, somebody who did this and was good at it, or maybe not so good at it, but wanted to teach others. That was sort of where the knowledge came from and where the
Mm,
coaching came from. I did it, therefore I can teach you how to do it. Um, and then it started progressing into more and more of a professional occupation or a professional job. And Chris Carmichael, who is the founder of CTS and namesake, and is also currently our chief endurance officer. So he is also a CEO,
I
um,
love it.
still a part of the company. Uh, he really, truly created and invented this as a profession and a true visionary. We're moving into our 25th year this year. So this is going to
Wow.
be our 25th anniversary this year. So if you think about when he did this is back, 2001 is when it started. And coaching as a profession, there were probably some coaches that maybe called themselves professionals, but it was not widespread, and there weren't truly any businesses that were operating at that time. And Chris created all that and had a vision that he saw through and made come true. And it's interesting because we've been to some seminars and some different meetings and so on, and I think the folks that have been around for a while understand what happened and the impact of what Chris did and what Chris created, and have acknowledged that at one meeting at a coaching conference at USA Psych, and most of our CTS coaches were all sitting at one table, and the moderator said, "Hey, there's more coaching equity and more coaching knowledge sitting at that table over there in the corner than you can probably imagine." And he says that was due to Chris and his work and his vision and what he did in creating CTS, and it stands because it was well thought out, it was solid, the principles and the standards were high, and they stay that way through today. So um, I think in part that's a big reason why we're sitting here today and can have this as a profession for folks that want to do that. So,
Yeah, yeah. So sort of corollary to that, I mean, it almost sounds like the coaching profession was similar to what you were saying about when you were on 7-Eleven, and, almost like no one thought you could make a living racing a bike. No one thought you could really make a living and make a profession as a coach. And like you said, Chris Carmichael being the visionary he was able to kind of foresee that and really execute on it. And personally, I just want to say, a lot of the businesses that I've worked for and have been around, they start off with really strong, sort of foundation of their morals and their North Star. And then as time goes on, it slips, and then it becomes something else as time goes on. And I just want to commend you for staying true to that vision that Chris had about, the integrity and the education piece of coaches. And because I think that's pretty rare.
yeah, you know where it really lives is in our coaches, the longtime coaches, the guys that have been here, the guys and gals that have been here for uh, a number of years. And when something happens that's not up to those standards that were drilled into them over and over and over again, they let people know. They live that and believe that, and um, it is really awesome to see that they do it themselves and they hold others accountable to those standards. And so that training and that legacy and those beliefs have lived on truly through the coaches. So upholding those standards and having that still in place today isn't because I gave a speech saying, hey, this is who we are, and this is what we do, and this is what we stand for. It's truly a part of the DNA of our coaches, and they take it upon themselves to teach that and mentor any of the new coaches that come on board to operate and uphold those same standards.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's something super, super, super special. Um, So, how has training technology sort of evolved, and how has it influenced the coaching profession over the years? It was funny. I remember I was home back at my parents' house. I don't know how many years ago, and I was cleaning out some stuff in my childhood bedroom, and I came across this old polar heart rate monitor, and the display. I mean, the display was like the size of a laptop computer. There was maybe one or two functions, which I would probably still be better with. I'm not very good with technology, but it's just incredible to where we are today with all the metrics and all the different data. And so if you could maybe elaborate on that kind of, even with your time with USA Cycling and now with CTS, how in your time as a professional athlete, how the technology's changed, but moreover, how has that changed the coaching landscape?
Yeah, so what we have available to us today compared to what was around 20, 30, 40 years ago, it's night and day. And I would say the one thing, if you look on the cycling side, and we'll elaborate on all the other things that are available in a minute, but the one thing that really changed the landscape was the addition of power
Yeah.
and in the ability to measure power, and then all of the ways that can be applied and analyzed and interpreted. Suddenly it moved from being subjective to objective. And now
Mm,
you've got data and science, real science, not just what somebody believes to be true or not what has been done for the last 50 years is the standard. It's starting to change how everybody looked at the sport and all the things available now with biometrics. So power isn't necessarily arrived, say, on the running side yet, but all the other biometrics and all the measurements and all the data that are available have changed the landscape there as well. So the coaches truly have to be uh, sort of data and science oriented, understand all that, as well as sort of the old fashioned art of being a coach.
yeah.
And it's really the blending of those two things together that make a truly great coach. So but the addition of, like I said, all those biometrics and power and everything else that we have at our disposal today um, truly change the landscape and allow us to do what we do to the level we do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point about that fusion of the art of coaching and now all this technology stuff. And I feel like almost like a day or a week doesn't go by when there's either a new product out there for an existing technology, or someone's trying to develop a whole brand new technology around a whole new data point. So it's never changing landscape. I feel like it's from your end, it must be a lot of work trying to stay on top of all the new stuff that's out there, but moreover, maybe what's the quality stuff? Like, is this data point even important, or does this really not, have any, influence or impact on our athletes or coaches?
Yeah, it's so if you base sort of your decisions and what you do on true science and data and studies that have been proven out versus what you maybe personally believe or what somebody else told you, you can work through all of that and you come up with a pretty good set of guidelines and
Mm,
standards, to work with. And that's what our guys do. They're constantly working on that stuff, and they will be challenged by the other coaches if like we just had a great conversation yesterday and it was all around strength training, and I was mostly a spectator listening to it and listening to all the different viewpoints, and it came up a number of times, hey, this study says this and this study proves that and this, and so they're very much science based, our coaches, and data based, and not just sort of these random beliefs or sort of old tales or old ways of doing things are not how they make their decisions and not how they plan out in athletes coaching and in athletes progression towards whatever it is they want to do. So um, again, moving back, it's great to have all those things at our disposal, but it's really important to have the discipline not to go too far off the path from what's real and what's real science and what really works versus what's the latest greatest shiny object,
Yeah.
or what's sort of that old school knowledge that may or may not have been dispelled at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very unique thing. I think a lot of people will say that they are science, based or evidence-based database, but I feel like oftentimes a lot more than it should, a lot of individual bias or whatnot slips in. So that's to be commended. Um, So what are some of the main reasons people come to CTS, to athletes being to become to get coached? Is it I'm training for XYZ race? It's I don't have the discipline to do it myself. If I didn't know if there were any trends that you guys see there or possibly even track as far as like why people get coached.
Yeah. So it's a great question. And I think the answer is actually the same today as it was 20 years ago, why they
Hmm.
would come here. And again, it goes back to sort of how and why the company was founded and formed and what the standards were and what our coaches are all about. So like I said, Chris did an amazing job at laying the foundation for all this. And if you look at our coaches, education is a huge part of what we look for in a coach when we bring new coaches on, and we are constantly bringing on new coaches to handle the athletes that are coming in. And I looked at our list the other day, and just a short list of a few coaches, and looking at uh, some of their qualifications and their education levels. And I'm looking at BS in biochemistry and genetics, a BS in exercise physiology with minors in chemistry and coaching, MS exercise physiology, PhD nutrition and exercise science, MS in exercise science, PhD nutrition in sport and chronic disease, MS in exercise physiology, PhD exercise physiology with the MS in kinesiology, and MA in applied sports psychology. And I mean, the list goes on and on.
Wow.
These are all our coaches. And this, I feel myself, I'm not even qualified to be coaching in this company. My degrees are all in business. And yeah, I've got the practical knowledge and the experience of years and years of doing it. But these guys are absolutely amazing at the education and the time and effort they've put in to being a professional coach. And it doesn't stop there. One of the things that we do at CTS is also continuing education. Every week we have
Hmm.
continuing education on both the running and ultra running, and the other sports that we coach play into that as well. So the education never stops. It keeps going and keeps going to stay current and up on everything that's happening. Other things that happen here is like CTS has its own physiology lab
Hmm.
with people running these tests and these machines and doing the tests and interpreting the tests and working with the athletes. I think that's not a very common thing for a coaching company to be able to do. Um, so I think it's a unique blend of sort of history and standards and where we are currently, and frankly it's just having some of the best coaches in the world as a part of this organization. They have, and they always have been of that standard. And so someone's looking for those sorts of credentials, it's like it's a pretty easy choice
Yeah.
to come here. So I actually just hired one of our coaches to coach me.
Oh, nice.
So just in the last few days, I have been dabbling in ultra running recently. So I've done cycling long enough. I still love it and still do it. But last year I decided I was going to be an ultra runner. So I did it on my own and coached myself. And I'm like, yeah, that turned out okay. I finished my race, but I could have done a lot better. I realized that. And so
I love that.
I have the best ultra running coaches in the world. What the hell am I thinking? Why not hire one of them to work with me
Right.
and get me to a better place? And so that wasn't a hard decision. So I had to make that decision myself. I was pretty determined. Nope, I can do this. I'll prove I can do it. I've got enough knowledge. But no, in the end, I was going to be a lot better off working with one of our coaches who are truly experts and masters of the craft. So
Yeah, that's awesome. It's
yeah,
it's so funny you said that, going through the resumes of all those people that send in applications about like masters and PhDs. And here you are, the CEO of CTS, here I am, the founder of USK. It's so funny, like even with the conference that we did this year, you know, I listen to all these speakers and all these people that we collaborate with to create content. I'm like, I don't even think I could get hired as a janitor at USK. You know what I mean? I don't even that would be a possibility.
yeah. I if you think about it's really the passion of these individuals to learn and to get that knowledge and then be able to apply it. And yeah, if they were in tech, they'd probably be living in a different place and have different salaries, but this is what they love and this
Yeah.
is the passion. This is what they want to do. And the same thing, I've been to a couple of your conferences, and the level of the speakers and their knowledge and their expertise is unbelievable. And I get a lot out of listening to those guys every time. And same thing with our own coaches, listening to either the continuing eds or when we have meetings or our coaching summit last year, and listening to them present to the group. It really blows me away every time at how good they are and how knowledgeable they are and how much they care about what they do and doing it right.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think certain industries are driven by, how much money can I make? And coaching is definitely one of those driven by passion. This is what I love. I feel, at least I feel this way. I want to share that passion and expertise with others. And it's a very, very cool profession in that regard.
Yeah.
Um, so what are some of the significant trends that you see in the coaching landscape at CTS? Again, maybe not, back to into the 80s, but just sort of as time goes on, are there any trends that you see within the coaching landscape, whether it be because of data or whatnot?
I there are number of trends, obviously, but I think one, as the coaching profession, grows and proliferates, I think it's important to, you know, understand the difference between different sort of levels or kinds of coaching,
Hmm.
and it spans the spectrum. And that's from, let's say, maybe more of a consumer's viewpoint, but also as an end user, it's like, who is it or what are you going to engage with? And that's going to continue. And obviously, one of the big trends right now, when I say it's going to continue, I believe it's going to continue to grow, and it's going to branch off, and we'll get into that probably a little bit later, but it's going to branch off into to other areas. But if you think about it right now, obviously the hot topic's AI,
Yeah.
and AI coaching is here. It's 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 okay. It's decent right now. It's going to get better and better. It's in the very, very early stages, and that's a trend that's going to continue for sure. It's a very different product. It's not the same as one-on-one coaching, but it's going to get better and better, and it's going to grow. Obviously, that's a big trend. I think I think people are getting comfortable with the idea that you can't be an expert in everything, and they're getting more and more comfortable with hiring an expert to help get them through whatever it is they're engaging in, right? Whether
Mhm.
that's in the workplace, their personal life, or some big goal that they want to achieve. And the idea of hiring a coach to help them is becoming more and more commonplace, and I think that's going to continue to grow as well. So if you think about it, coaches at one point were just for elite athletes or
Yeah.
professional athletes, and then it's sort of moved into, therefore, anyone who's sort of a serious athlete and has a goal or wants to achieve something. And then maybe even more casual athletes. And I think it's gonna grow beyond just athletes into people that want to be super healthy and high performance humans, not necessarily ones that want to win a race or finish in a certain time or something like that. So
Mm,
I think the profession is going to continue to grow, and it's going to continue to spread out into other areas where we don't see it as much today. So that's exciting, and preparing for that is an interesting task as well. We've, always been very immersed in the sport. All of the folks we work with are athletes, and we call them athletes, and I think they truly appreciate that, regardless of the level that they're at.
sure.
And I think the we went back and spoke about the passion for doing this in the industry. And I mean, obviously, yes, I've coached myself, and I've I get as much, if not more, pleasure out of seeing someone I've coached or someone I've worked with succeed and be successful as doing it yourself. So if you think about that,
Yeah.
wait a minute, yourself, you can only, hey, I did it, yay me, and but what if you're coaching 10 people and they're all successful? You just sort of multiplied a pretty good feeling by 10 versus what you could achieve by yourself. And
Yeah.
it's a super, super rewarding feeling, when that happens. And I think I'm as proud of my athletes when they're successful as I've ever been as anything I've done myself. So,
Yeah.
um, and like I said, I think that's going to continue to expand into areas even beyond just, strictly sport. And that's going
Yeah.
to be exciting to see.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. I think, I mean, it makes complete sense. It would go, in a different route or beyond, just the athletic endeavor and just overall health and wellness. I could definitely see that. It's so funny you said that about, you get just as if not more enjoyment out of seeing your athletes succeed versus your own personal career. I was watching that Netflix Unchained, that where Netflix
Mm-hmm.
follows the Tour de France. And the thing that's so great about that, I feel like, is they have the cameras inside the team cars, and all the directors are all former top pro riders themselves. And who've been very accomplished. But to see the excitement, some of them are crying, when their rider does well. It's incredibly fascinating to sort of see the human side of coaching and being a team director, and how excited they get, uh, you know, maybe like you said, more so than their own career.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it truly is. And those are interesting scenes to see. When we were racing, we just heard the stories about what happened in the car or what
Mm,
happened at home when somebody saw it. And you kind of had to use your imagination of what that was like. Because I heard a story on that final stage in the Tour de France in '87, when I had taken off and was solo by myself in front of the break. I heard stories from our director Mike Neal that one of our big sponsors, Signor Dololio, who was the our Italian sponsor with Hoonved, was in the back seat of the car that day, and they said he was just bouncing off the walls and the ceiling and windows, going crazy and yelling, and was so excited. And it was so cool to imagine that happening in the back of the car. And now, of course, with all the technology and the broadcasts and all the information that we could share, you could see it happen. And that's what
yeah.
you were seeing in that special. But it is that excitement and that passion that everyone has, that I think really drives things forward a lot of the time. And that's why it's why we do it.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Completely agree. So being around, running a company with so many successful, super smart coaches, what are some of the key qualities that you've seen that athletes are looking for, in their coaches? Again, maybe just you could even, I guess, sort of take it all the way back to the time you were an athlete, but specifically now, what are some of the things, when you get inquiries from athletes, what are they looking for in the coach?
Great question. I don't think there's any one answer to that, but if I had to sum it up in a very succinct way, it would be one, knowledge and experience, obviously. But two, is or maybe even just as, if not more important, is empathy. How is this person going to relate? Because it really is an interpersonal relationship. How is this person going to relate to me and work with me? And what is their style? How do they operate? Um, One of the things we do when we're bringing athletes on is we always have a call with a prospective athlete and a coach to make sure it's a good fit
Hmm.
for that athlete. And at times we will set them up with a couple different coaches, and then they can make their choice. Hey, we think, these are two great fits. Why don't you talk to both of them and you decide which one? Sometimes we know, hey, this is going to be a great fit, but there's always that call before it happens. And I think that is the chance for the coach also to understand, hey, is this going to be a good fit for me working with this athlete? How are we gonna mesh? How are things going to work out? And I think that that part of the coaching, lots of folks could crunch numbers and have data and do things in Training Peaks and elsewhere, um, and have a lot of knowledge. But as we went back and said earlier, it's that blend of that knowledge and that experience along with the empathy and the art of coaching that truly um, makes the difference and makes for a good relationship and a good coaching scenario. When I listen, I'm lucky enough to hear our coaches when they're here in the office, or we have a few coaches that are based out of our office here in Colorado Springs. When they're on calls with their athletes, I rarely hear them talking about, well, your power number says this, and we think you're, 1% better than you were 2 weeks ago, and therefore we're going to adjust your training according to this data and that data. Nope, it's almost always human conversations that
Hmm.
they're having versus the data. The data is behind what they're suggesting and how they're guiding that athlete and the athletes. Some are really, really into the data. Some say, not as much. It runs the spectrum, but almost all of those conversations are more, hey, what's going on with you? What's affecting your training? Where's your head at? How are you think you're going to be for this next event? I think we're on track. You can feel good about what you're doing and relax. And they're really more human conversations than um, a lot of science and a lot of data and numbers being thrown around. And
Yeah.
it's that side of the coaching that's every bit as important, if not more important, than all of the education and the science and the degrees and the data. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the roles I had when I was in the fitness industry was a director of training for a big Fortune 500 company, and my job was essentially exactly what you said. It was matchmaker. Member says I want a trainer. Here's my availability. This is my goals, and then I had to set it up. But usually, one of the most important thing, more so than even like the specializations of the trainer, was personality. Like, would this person mesh well with that person? Because
Mhm.
doesn't matter how many degrees you have, if there's a mismatch there, it's probably not going to go so well. So yeah, the art of coaching, I think, is it's a very, especially in the age of data and all these numbers, it's a very underestimated uh thing. I think it's so critically important. And as you said, probably much more important than some of the other factors that people think are more important.
Yeah. So it's that's a skill,
Yeah.
that's um, people skills definitely matter in this profession. But it's the whole package, that really makes the difference when you say what's someone looking for. I think you got to tick a lot of boxes
Yep.
to really be at the top of the game here and to call yourself a professional coach. Um, I think the other one of the things we haven't really talked about yet, and we talk about the business of coaching, and the I find most of our coaches, they really want to be coaches. They don't necessarily they aren't oriented towards being business people. And so
Yeah.
what we've been able to do at CTS is we have a business that takes care of all the business things and has all of the infrastructure, and for a coach to really thrive and be a coach and to continually feed them athletes. But the business of doing all the behind the scenes things and having someone, all the customer service, we call it athlete services, all the things that they do and all the interactions they have with the customers are so valuable to the coaches, because the coaches can then focus on coaching and they can
Yep.
coach more people. If they didn't have that resource, well, guess what? They'd be spending half their time figuring out how to bill someone or how to call someone, hey, this happened or that happened, or where do I find my next my next athlete? How do I advertise and promote myself? And some naturally are pretty good at that, but there's a limit when you're doing coaching at this level, with that degree of involvement. There's going to be a limit to
Sure.
how many athletes you can effectively coach and do a really good job. And if you don't have to do all the business stuff, and you've got somebody else doing that for you, it allows you to really focus on what it is you want to do and do it well. So, and do
Yeah.
it with a few more people than you would otherwise. So I think that's one of the big value adds that CTS brings to the table for the coaches. And at at the end or behind the scenes is probably why we have so many amazing coaches. These are coaches that really want to coach and are really good at it, not folks that necessarily want to run billing schemes, on Mondays and figure out how their social media and Google ads look on Fridays. And let's see if we have any time left over to actually work with the athletes, so
Yeah. That's
it's
a
a,
great point.
it's a big equation. Yeah.
Yeah, because that stuff, especially if you're not, A, good at it, or B, want to be care anything about it, that stuff's exhausting. It's completely exhausting. So
Yeah.
it's a great structure that you guys have there.
Yeah.
Um, so what are some of the current challenges or headwinds that you see the coaching profession facing? You had mentioned AI, and I think a lot of coaches have different perspectives. We just in my role, I have the opportunity to talk to a lot of different coaches. They all view it that it's here to stay, it's going to evolve. Some people view it as a threat to the industry. Others view it as it's not really a threat, it's something we just need to work with and sort of finesse and figure out how to coexist or even utilize it to our best advantage. But so I guess AI, but also any other areas that you think are sort of challenges to the coaching profession.
Um, I think, I mean, all the stuff I just mentioned are one of the things. It's like how to run a really good business is a challenge, and it's going to continue to get, I mean, more and more challenging. If you think about it, the expectations that the average consumer has for almost anything you do, it's like, oh, how many star ratings did they have on this product or that service, or did these people respond? And it's like, holy cow, you get evaluated and reviewed on almost everything you do. So
Yeah.
it's like there's really, you can't let down any part of the game. So the whole equation, the whole puzzle has to be really, really good. And that takes a number of different skill sets and number of different sort of most likely types of people, or artificial intelligence or robots or whoever it is that's going to be doing a lot of this stuff to be able to execute. Um, yep, AI is coming. It's really a different product from the high level one-on-one coaching. How good is it going to get? We will see. But uh, at the moment, it's not quite the same as those human, one-on-one interactions. Which it's not even close, but it's going to get better and better. But I view that as really a different product. And is it going to replace coaches? Nope. It is a sort of a different product in a slightly different category. And will those categories come closer and closer together? Yep, they will. So how you position yourself, either as a coach or as a business, is going to be important in having a sort of a view to not just where are we now, but where is this going to be in 5 years or 10 years? CTS been around 25 years this year. That is absolutely amazing,
Yeah.
that it has survived. So sort of those building blocks and the way the pieces of the puzzle were put together absolutely made sense, or else we were just super lucky. Doesn't matter. We ended up where we are. And I would like to say it's, I could almost assure it was because there was a lot of thought and a lot of hard work put into it. And we endured, a lot of different times, a lot of different phases, a lot of different challenges over all those years, and are still here. I think working with probably more coaches than any coaching organization, endurance coaching organization in the world. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty proud to be a part of all that, but can't get too comfortable with that. Stuff's going to continue to change. And like I said, we're number one advocates for our coaches. How do we keep working and setting things up to allow them to do, what they do so well and what they love to do. And we'll keep working at that, as well as, looking at and embracing some of the other products that go along with that.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
you mentioned while you were talking sort of coaching in 5 to 10 years, obviously the AI is going to be a thing. You would alluded to maybe even, outside the realm of athletic performance, just more of health and wellness. What are some other areas that you see sort of where the coaching profession's going? Again, if there's any trends within that, say, 5 to 10 year beyond time period, as far as just, I guess, the evolution of coaching. Any other things other than AI, or sort of maybe a move, or not a move, but in addition to that sort of health and wellness area?
I mean, if you study this, or you follow some of the um, stuff that's out there, or books that have been written, things like, Peter Attia and sort of the art and science of longevity, or the science and art of longevity, is book sitting on my desk here. But
Mhm.
so, and you think about some of the connections that have been made. Like, if you're going to be super healthy, live a really good life for a long time, and then pass quickly without being sick for 10 or 20 years, that's really the goal. And it's starting to become the goal of more and more people. And then you back up a little bit and start looking at things like what we do for elite and high level athletes. Once that was only the domain of the elite and high level athletes. Start doing VO2 tests or threshold tests, and sort of these different markers and things that are starting to find their way into more mainstream thoughts in mainstream sort of medicine and health and well-being stuff. We're already doing that, and we have that knowledge. And like I said earlier, I think there is going to be a wave of people that also are able to connect these dots and understand this. And so what we do with athletes, I think, is gonna expand to maybe folks that don't consider themselves athletes first, but they probably are in part. Everyone is an athlete somewhere down in their skin, and so I think there's going to be some really cool opportunities and sort of avenues to go down that um, you wouldn't have necessarily thought of, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And that's pretty exciting. And I think it opens the doors, not just for coaches, but for, the coaching businesses and entities that are involved with it too. So um, I do think, 5, 10 years from now, we're going, of course that makes sense, but
Right.
at the moment, people aren't necessarily thinking that way. If you think about it, folks are starting to take more and more accountability for their own health and their own journeys down those paths. And I mean, I understand how I personally work with my doctor. I do the research, I figure things out, I figure out what's going on. There's so much information. If you know where to look and how to interpret it, you can figure an awful lot out by yourself. And so then when I go in, it's a conversation, with myself and my healthcare professionals, not like, well, we saw this in your blood test, therefore take this pill and that pill. That kind of thinking, I think, is going to be very, very outdated in a short period of time. And I think people are going to start to get more and more involved with their own health and their own journey, sort of down that path. And it's not just elite athletes that are going to um, be interested in a lot of the things we do with athletes and with people that have some big goals for some sort of athletic accomplishment or endurance event, whatever it may be. So I think that's on the horizon. It's already here. Folks are talking about it. A lot of folks are starting to act on it. To be honest, one of our pretty significant cohorts in folks that we coach are older athletes, and
Mm,
as they've become sort of more established in life and have a little more free time and a little more disposable income, they want to make the most out of what they're doing. And um, we're getting a great response in working with them, and more sort of that demographic and that cohort are coming on, and there seems to be a great interest, and that sort of fits very well with what I was just explaining
yeah.
about moving into some other spaces versus just coaching folks that are riding in the Tour de France or winning the Boston Marathon. So um, that those practices and that knowledge and that understanding that comes originally from working with athletes, I think is going to find a home in many, many more places coming up.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think it's obviously the smart way to go. I think more people, to your point, are sort of realizing that you got to look out. No one's looking out for you. You got to look out for number one, and whether it be, the pharma companies or whoever, that you have to be in charge of your own health. And I think that I definitely see that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just not just within USCA, but just, following the news. And it seems that more people are becoming aware of that fact and therefore becoming more accountable to themselves and, hiring coaches or health coaches or whatnot. So I think
Yeah.
it's a trend that I'm sure will only become more popular. Um, well, Jeff, thank you so much for your time on the podcast today. This was great. I would certainly love to do another podcast with you on some other topics, maybe about your time with 7-Eleven or whatever, but I think you have such a wealth of information. For our listeners, if anyone would like to check out the CTS website, the URL is trainright.com, and we'll have that on at the outro screen of the video aspect of this as well. So Jeff, thank you so much for your time on the podcast today, for your insights about coaching. This has been really great.
Yep. Thanks, Rick. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Thank
All
you.
right. All right.